Scream 6 once again took our heroes out of Woodsboro and into Montreal. New York, not Montreal. Where does Scream 7 go from here? I've got some ideas. Stick around to hear my pitch on this special horror reanimated episode coming up next. Scream 6. Out of Woodsboro into New York City. We've gone to LA. They've gone to college with Neve Campbell's character Sydney. Where does Scream 7 go from here? Well, in Scream 4, we've had people trying to get famous off of the Woodsboro murders. In Scream 5, we had fanatical fans trying to force a good movie by manipulating through murder and mayhem. And in Scream 6, we had obsessed fans and collectors, and it got me thinking, what is the logical progression of this? Well, keeping with that, I'm not saying it's the greatest idea, but I could definitely see them going to Comic-Con or something like that. Think about it. Not only could you have crazed fans walking around, you never know who's going to act or jump or who the real suspect is, keeping with the series lore, but also the cosplayers. They played on this in Scream 6 on the subway scene where everyone's dressed up for Halloween in Ghostface and other costumes. But now they could really expand upon that because they could have thousands of people dressed like Ghostface. Because in the Scream franchise, Stab, not only the Woodsboro murders, but Stab is a huge success and franchise a la Halloween, Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream. I don't know why I couldn't say street there for a second. You know, it happens. Scream has a deep history with the slasher film genre. They're always paying actually movies in general. If you look, I think Kirby's room in Scream 4, there's pictures of like the rear window posters from Alfred Hitchcock and other things like that. So film in general, but also horror movies and slasher movies they pay reference to and make reference to. So to me, a Comic-Con or a convention, with Stab being a big part of the mythos of the Scream franchise now, you could have a convention with thousands of masked Ghostface characters lurking around. You never know who is going to be there. And on top of that, you could host a big Stab marathon. Maybe there's a panel and you can go different ways with this. Either a panel reuniting of Stab film stars talking about the films and the events that preceded them. You could have a true survivor, first, Final Girl or Woodsboro survivors. Imagine a horror convention having the real survivors from the real Woodsboro murders and extended story at the convention. I think that would be a good hook and selling point. And you could have the whole, I'm not going, or why would we go to this? This is grotesque. And potentially the tug of war between the sisters of, we need to get over this and embrace it, and he's dead, and yes, could it always happen, but this is always going to follow us wherever we go, so we might as well make some money on this. You can go a number of different ways with that. Speaking of money and being made on this, do you really think that if Gale Weathers survives Scream 6, that she doesn't have another book or another movie in mind, and she wouldn't put something like this together? There's been a contentious relationship at times between the Carpenter sisters, Neve Campbell, Gale Weathers, depending on what she's doing and what action she's taking in the movies and exploiting these events. So in that respect, I could see Gale Weathers putting this together like a super agent and raking in all the dough. I mean, what does she have at this point? She's been stabbed a number of times. She might as well capitalize on this. You could also have cool cameos by people involved. Scream 4 or 5, maybe it was 5, had a cameo by the Dead Meat crew, the podcast and YouTube channel Dead Meat. Go check them out. You could have Sean Clark. He's the horror personality agent, the convention all-stars extraordinaire. That guy's got carved out a cool little niche for himself. He's got just the coolest job in the world. I'm sure it's a lot harder than it looks, but who wouldn't want to hang out with people like from the horror movie industry all day and make documentary films and collect relics? I mean, that'd be amazing. The characters may not ever find themselves in a million years in a situation like this. Maybe they have to be drawn into it, and maybe that's where the writing team comes up to find a really good reason for them to do this. I'm not saying it should go this way. I'm not saying it will go this way. But I'm looking at what Scream 4 and 5 and now 6 have been about, and this natural progression of fans, obsessive stalking plays right into it. Let's not forget, there have been many cases where Scream queens like Danielle Harris, Alice from Friday the 13th Part 1, her name escapes me right now, or Jodie Foster have had stalkers in the past and have had close calls. This is completely within the realm of possibility, not just for the stab actor, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe you bring in the new cast instead of young high school kids. Now it's stab actors, and they're the ones who are in the group, and you have the existing Carpenter sisters and maybe whoever else survives Scream 6 into this fold, and you could throw in an overlay of a different story. So maybe it's not just about this. Maybe the killer's making a documentary, because as we saw with the Halloween 25 Years of Terror, it wasn't just a convention, it was a documentary. We've seen killers attempting to make their own version of a movie or to force this to happen, but they could be with social media or with, shit, I'm talking on a Canon T5i right now. They could have GoPros and things like that while they're making their own documentary, and then they're gonna display it instead of the latest stab movie. Instead of screening that movie, instead they screen a trailer or they screen their own documentary on Stab and the Woodsboro murders, but starring them dressed up as Ghostface. Just a bunch of ideas that I came up with that, to me, as soon as I saw, I think the We Watched a Movie guys on Twitter, go check them out on YouTube. Great channel. They posed the question, where does Scream 7 go from here? They went to New York, and now they're going somewhere else, and immediately I thought, hey, right up my alley. And based on where the past couple movies have gone with the motives of the killers and getting into the idea of obsessed fans and horror movies and that whole universe, to me, Comic-Con or convention, 25 Years of Terror. Since they want to riff on horror movies, do, what is it, 35 years of Stab or Ghostface, riff on it and have it put together by Sean Clark and riff on real life. And maybe Gale Weathers is teams up with Sean Clark because he's the man, but something along those lines. If you like the reanimated style of what ifs as opposed to just straight commentaries and reviews of horror movies, then subscribe and check out the other horror reanimated videos in the playlist on my channel. There's a bunch of them. If you like this one, I'm sure you'll enjoy those too, and hopefully there's more coming. So I'm out of time. I'm bshowbrian. Thanks for checking out the channel, and we'll see you at Scream 7.